Greetings, Star Wars fans. My name is John Edward Lee, and I'm here with another universe-expanding Books and Toys. This is a special edition to sort of go through what came out in the High Republic last year. The High Republic just had its year anniversary just a couple days ago on Tuesday, and it spawned a huge amount of stuff. I will tell you why I'm excited about, why I was excited before it came out, and why I'm continuing to be excited. As far as new canon goes, the comics and the books have really stuck to the timeline of the films, like right before Episode 1 to just after Episode 9, and then sort of pads everything in between, which is kind of the opposite of what Dark Horse did, where they would explore other eras, thousands of years before the movie, hundreds of years after the movies, things like that. Even some time, as far as the Old Republic, I mean, there's so many different, parts. The Old Republic is easily my favorite era, and of course I miss it being absent from the new canon. Now, High Republic takes place about 230 years before the original Star Wars movies. So it's not quite Old Republic, because Old Republic is about 1,000 and before that. But it is a new, unexplored era. It's interesting because you will have characters alive that were in the movies that just are really old. Chewbacca's dad has been in it. Yoda, of course, has been in it. Not much, but he's been in it. And Jabba the Hutt, all these characters are alive in this era. However, everyone else is new, and it's called the High Republic because it's this era in which there was just so much peace and prosperity in the galaxy. And that, of course, starts to go awry as two very important groups of bad guys show up. The Drengr, who are basically like zombie bushes. That doesn't do them justice. They do look like giant bushes with tendrils and beaks, and they want to eat all life. They're pretty terrifying and hard to stop. The Nihil are marauders who basically are like a cluster of pirates and bad guys who basically will get onto a ship, like a pirate would, and then gas everybody, and when they're passed out, they steal everything. They start to become a huge, huge deal and a thorn in the Jedi's side. But what I really wanted to do with this is just show you the sheer amount of content that's come out. And there's a couple different categories. There's adult novels, more YA teen novels, some a little bit younger, comic books, of course, manga, and children's books. So what I want to do is start with the very first thing that they have brought out was Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule, who does a lot of the comic book writing. His as far as comic book writers for Star Wars stuff that I always appreciate and really enjoy, Charles Soule's pretty much it. I also like Kevin Scott, or however you say it. He's a good writer as well. He's been writing Star Wars stuff for a very long time. So that was the first adult book. Light of the Jedi introduces us to many of the characters that play out in the story. Of course, Avar Kriss being right on the cover, she's sort of at first, the main Jedi, the one that they all look to, the one that inspires the most peace and love throughout the galaxy. Things have changed and gotten darker for Avar. Moving right along, the next adult novel is The Rising Storm by Kevin Scott. Also really good. I mean, actually, I think this might be my favorite out of all of them. I chose this as my favorite book for the last year. It was really, really, really good. Ty York is a new character. Here's what I love about this character. She left the Jedi Order when she was a Padawan, so she's a Force-using good guy who's not a Jedi. I like that. I like the Ahsokas of the world. I also wore this shirt because in this novel, the Togrutas are sort of being, not coerced, they're sort of being wined and dined to join the Republic, so they were a big part as well. Coming out just this week, so I haven't even had a chance to read this yet. In fact, I just got this copy yesterday. That's why I did do a video on the anniversary. I wanted to make sure I had this first. The Fallen Star by Claudia Gray, one of my favorite Star Wars writers of all times. Everything she does is amazing. Very, very glad to have this. This has got a couple of my favorites right on there. It's Orla right there. I really like that character. And of course, Ty York. Very cool. I'm excited to read that. Now, I mentioned before that they had some YA novels. YA novels tend to be, at least my definition, like late middle school, high school, but that doesn't mean they're bad. I really enjoy them. In fact, I think a lot of the best stuff in new canon comes from YA novels. Ahsoka comes to mind. I really enjoy that novel. What's weird about Lost Stars, that's arguably the best book in new canon. But what's weird about them, and I can't speak on this series as much, but YA novels always have the sex in them. The adult novels don't. The YA novels, they always work a little like, did something just happen? And yeah, something has happened. So the first one that came out for this series is Into the Dark, also by Claudia Gray. I've already discussed how much I enjoy her work. This book got a lot of flack when it came out because there's a ship called The Vessel, which I think is cool. It's the guy who runs it. He's sort of written to be Matthew McConaughey. He's just sort of like a bohemian dude. So the idea they would just name his vessel The Vessel, I thought was cool. What people hated or loved was a character named Geode, who is a giant rock. Nothing more to that. He inexplicably shows up places and people talk to him like he's a real creature, but he's just a rock, and people thought that was dumb, but the humor that they played in it was really good. Going along that series is Out of the Shadow. I like this story a lot because it revolved around Vernestra Rwoh, who's one of my favorite Jedi of this era. She's really cool because her lightsaber, if she flips a button, it turns into a light whip, which is kind of cool. That used to happen all the time in other Star Wars, the Marvel comics that ran in the 70s, 80s, things like that. So I love seeing that back. So there, like I said, there's also like more of a 5th grade, middle school series, Test of Courage, who is also written by Justina Ireland. This was about Vernestra Rwoh. This is pretty much where she came from. Great story about a couple of Jedi kids. Something about the High Republic that, again, people thought was odd at first was that there's a lot of kid Jedi masters, not teenagers, kids. And they're like, what? Anakin was like 20 when he became a Jedi Knight. How is this 16-year-old a Jedi? Well, they haven't really explained anything, but it's the High Republic, They're so, I don't want to say arrogant, but so sure of themselves that they just make those decisions. There's no bad guys to fight, and when the bad guys show up, they are not as prepared as they think that they would be. The other one that they did is Race to Crash Point. I always want to say Center Point Station. That's a different Star Wars thing. Race to Crash Point Tower by Daniel Jose Older. I really like his stuff. His comic books are good. Not everyone liked his story Last Shot with Han in 3 different eras, but I loved it. He had an Ewok hacker and a Gungan butler, and I thought that was cool. But yeah, this is a really good one, or at least I think so. I don't think that there's any quality level differences. There are people who notice the writing style differences. I don't. I collect these, but I actually listen to audiobooks, which are fantastic. And one of the cool things about the audiobooks is it's not always the same narrator reading it. It's different people, but they're still using the same accents and voices that were established in the first one, especially with Mark Thompson, who does an amazing job in anything he narrates. So that's it for the book books. Well, let's talk about these. There's also some children's books. This is the type of book that I would imagine myself getting in a book fair. Just really cool art. They come with stickers that I'm never going to take out. But it's sort of a way to get little kids into the story of the High Republic. They plan to do more of all these series. This is, again, just in 1 year. And that's just half of it. This is books. They also have a Marvel series, which has one of my favorite couple of Jedi. There's Avar Kriss, because she's a big deal. But these Jedi are at Center Point Station, at the edge of the galaxy, sort of, it reminds me of Deep Space Nine. Just the whole thing in Star Trek. They're on the edge of the galaxy. There's stuff happening with different groups of people, like these guys, and of course the Nihil showing up. But Keeve Trennis is an amazing young Jedi. She gets knighted early on, like she's pretty young. But my favorite thing about her, she's got a foul mouth. She's a great character, a sweet character. People definitely, enjoy being around her. But she's always saying Karkin or some sort of Star Wars bad word. Her former master Skier, who also made his original appearance in Light of the Jedi, it's where he lost his arm, is a Trandoshan Jedi. I love Trandoshans, so seeing a Trandoshan Jedi. This series got super serious, like really fast. Really serious. And it's good. It's really good. But this is a great one. Avar Kriss riding a Rancor, more Kreeve. I always want to put an R in there. It's Keeve. Orla and Keeve. This is my favorite comic book of the year. This happens to, like I said, this is a dark series, but this one had a lot of hope. They have a good win in this one, and it felt good to read it. I've never given a comic book a perfect score. I gave this one a perfect score. Having two of my favorite characters on the cover didn't hurt. Keeve starts to end up within the Nihil. I won't explain how. You should read these. It also introduces these twins. This is just one of them. Sarat and Tarek, whose names are backwards. They are basically gender-neutral twins that are bonded by a connection. That's, twin connection is a thing, but when you're a Force-sensitive twin, we all know from Luke and Leia that there's a lot more going on between them. And again, things get darker and darker. This series is really when the Nihil starts showing up. The Nihil in all the books. But Marvel, they dealt with the Drengir first. There's Lorna D, who is one of the head people in the Nihil group. A really great character. I always liked Twi'leks. Now, that's not it for comics. That's not it at all. They started one recently called Trail of Shadows, which is about two investigators, a more typical non-Jedi and a Jedi, investigating the death of a Jedi. And they, of course, get into a lot of action. And it's, when I first got this, I called it Star Wars Noir. Because of the detective story, because they're investigating, it almost reminds me of an old detective story. That's not it for Marvel, though. Next week, on Wednesday, January 12th, my birthday, the Eye of the Storm series starts. About Martian or Marchion Ro. I've heard it pronounced both ways. In the audiobooks, they say Martian Ro. He is the Eye of the Storm. That's the name of the comic. That's what they call the leader of the Nihil. So it's his backstory. He's a really great character. In fact, I would argue that he's one of the best Star Wars villains ever made. He's cool, he's collected, but also unhinged at the same time. He's really smart, and I don't know if it was intended, but I like his voice in the audiobooks because he kind of sounds like a young Werner Herzog. He's got that, sort of thing going on with his voice. So that was it for Marvel, but Disney has another comic book company that brings up, and they're going to start doing Dark Horse again as well, I think as graphic novels, but that's going to be 3 companies doing Star Wars stories. Luckily, they're interconnected very well. Star Wars The High Republic Adventures are about a few kids on Starlight Beacon who, find themselves in the thick of it. Definitely a cool series. This is a series, hey, there's Yoda. He doesn't show up, and that's Marchion Rose, or Martian Rose, or however you say it. It's helmet. His original helmet, he gets 2. I won't tell you why, but he has 2 helmets. That was his first one. But yeah, Yoda doesn't show up much, but he is in this series. Kids just keep, going at it. IDW's series is more family friendly. It's not bad, just like the books. It's just aimed at a younger audience, which means it's very colorful. That does not mean that the story isn't really good. And I was talking about, I always want to say his name wrong. Daniel Jose Older, I think that's it. He writes this, so there's his name up at the top. But very good stuff. One of the cool things about this, if you know your Legends, I don't even like the term Legends, it's still EU to me, but if you know your Legends, you know Darth Krayt. who had this Von Dune crab mask that was from the Yuzhan Vong. Now, the Yuzhan Vong have not been recanonized, but the Von Dune crabs and that mask has on young Court. But, you know, very, very much looks like a young Darth Krayt. I mean, it's just a fun series. They're sneaking around. They're getting the Nihil left and right. They're just a bunch of kids, you know, just doing their thing. There's Court again. Oh, but what happened here? That's his Von Dune crab mask. And this character is amazing. His name is Buckets of Blood. He's like a doctor, you know? He's like a Jedi doctor. He's like you know, like a character to MASH, but he insists that people call him Buckets of Blood. That's not it for IDW either. IDW has a few series as well. They have The Monster at Temple Peak, which is about Ty Yorick, again, non-Jedi, but Jedi trained as a monster hunter. This reminds me of The Witcher, because she's a monster hunter for hire in it. And of course, she just hunts monsters. And that's what makes her kind of fun. Amongst many things, I love female characters, and I love how much the High Republic has focused on female characters. Now, there's 12 issues of the regular Marvel line. The 12th issue of the High Republic Adventures is coming out soon, so they're continuing on with this. Again, this is all stuff that came out within 1 year. It's a year from Tuesday, so it's a huge amount of information. But that's, again, not it for the comic books. They, of course, had an annual for the High Republic. I don't know why Marvel didn't do that, but they did. Free Comic Book Day, Viz Comics, and, of course, IDW. I guess there's manga companies, too. There's more than just IDW and Marvel. There's a lot of people who do Star Wars comics. But yeah, those were really cool. I always love Free Comic Book Day. I think it's one of the greatest things. I wasn't a huge reader. I am now, but I wasn't a huge reader when I was a kid. But comic books really got me into it. I remember finding a copy of Dracula adapted into a comic book at my elementary school library, and it's got me to read. That's the best way to get kids to read. Get them some free comics. See how they enjoy it. Do they like this or that? And then segue into other things if you want to get involved. That's was my journey, and now I read Star Wars comics and books constantly. Here's the manga. Very cool, and it's very, very typical manga, but it shows you how many different avenues they're going for with this. No video games yet, no toys, no apparel that I know of, just books and comics. They are going to bring out a show called Star Wars Acolyte, which is rumored to be in this era. This is the first phase of High Republic in the fall. They're going to the second phase, which is rumored to actually go further back in time, which, of course, you know, go get out of the movie timelines as much as possible. That's what I want to see. Not that I dislike the movie timelines, and I think the comics that they have brought out have been very, very good at bolstering the movies, showing you what happens in between, showing you connections. In the regular Star Wars series that takes place between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, we're starting to see Luke and Lando become the characters that they are in Return of the Jedi, because they probably have the biggest change out of everybody in those movies. But of course, they're not done with High Republic at all. It's dominated Star Wars books and comics. Not to say that they haven't done a whole lot of other books and comics, bunch of Thrawn books, a bunch of comic book series. I love it. I keep bringing it. I encourage anybody to dip their toe into the High Republic, however avenue. The adult books, the YA novels is a great start. But of course, these aren't separate stories. They're a continuing story. So really, it looks more like this. Because they take place in a continuing story. Let's get you a better shot of that. Yeah, there we go. Same thing with the comic books. The comic books take place in real time, referring to the books. It's so well interconnected. It reminds me of Shadows of the Empire, because they had books, a comic series, a video game, and it was all connected. They had a council of people who decided how that world is going to be, and that worked really well. Between Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, two things were happening. They were doing Clone Wars comics, cartoon series before the CGI one, the Tartakovsky one. Books as far as that took place in that era as well that were very interconnected and gave us an idea of how the clones worked well before the CGI show kind of reinvented them in a very good way. That at the same time, the new Jedi Order books were coming out, which is a staggering 19 book long series. It came out in 3 years, took place in 3 years, which is the same thing as what was happening in the Clone Wars. But it was about the Yuzhin Vong and their invasion of the galaxy. I love it. It's a big commitment, but it's definitely worth reading and checking out. It mostly focuses around Jason, Jaina, and Anakin Solo, the Solo twins and their little brother, named after their evil grandfather. But I still like that. Jason and Jaina are my favorite EU characters, probably. And it leads to some really, really even better series, Star Wars Legacy of the Force and Star Wars Fate of the Jedi, which is great because that's mostly about Luke and his son Ben. If you when The Force Awakens came out and Han called Kylo Ren out as being Ben, I was like, what? He's got Luke's kid's name? That's so weird, but kind of awesome at the same time. Because Leia and Luke would have both, been like, well, if you're going to name a Force-sensitive kid out of somebody, let's go to General Kenobi, a.k.a. Old Ben. But that is a great series because I just like, the idea of father and son Jedi out there fighting Sith left and right. In strange alien worlds on the end of the galaxy. I didn't intend to talk about that series that much. We were focusing on High Republic, but that's how important series like this are to me and to many, many fans because of the sheer epicness of so many long stories that are interconnected. It's better than a series of movies. It's equal to a TV show, except you get less, the TV show takes so long to make. Some of them we're not getting every year, like Mandalorian is, not already more than a year since the last series was on. You can get a lot in this because it's the comic books, it's the books, the kids' books, the manga. It's all interconnected into a massive story, and I love that it's successful. I like that it keeps going, and people tend to, at least the people I talk to, because I try to stay only in positive groups, not into people trashing stuff. And when I write reviews, I try to make them positive. And if I don't like something about a story, I'm like, I didn't like it, and I feel bad. But that's where it is, and I like the discussions I've had with people over these. What are your thoughts on the High Republic? What eras would you like to see? What would you like to see get recanonized? How did the Jedi change so much in between this period and the prequel period? Because they do not work the same at all. In fact, I would love a story just about Yoda explaining the changes. Yoda, again, is very absent in this era of High Republic, but he is there. Thank you so much for joining me. I was taking a break from the cartoon series that I was doing because we're going to do Clone Wars books, comics, and toys, just like I just talked about. But I wanted to touch base on the year anniversary or right around it of High Republic and give us a sort of where we are so far. Continue enjoying the books. Let me know what you think. And remember that the Force will be with you always.